Welcome, Jen, to the Sacred Roots podcast. I am so glad to be having you as a guest today. Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Thank you, Eleanor. It's such an honor to be here. I always enjoy connecting with you. My name is Jen Barnes, and I am both a clinical social worker and psychotherapist, as well as a coach for ADHD women entrepreneurs. But more than that, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, and I'm an auntie. And so honored to get to have those roles with women. I'm also
Mm,
a granddaughter of a lovely grandmother, and I'm just so happy to be here in this podcast where we honor the feminine, and
mm.
it's really great to see you.
I'm so glad to see you too.
Yeah.
So let's dive into ADHD because that's your expertise, and
Yeah.
we hear so much about ADHD right now. So my first question for you is like, what's happened? How come that ADHD has become such a thing today? Is it just because we are more aware of it, but it always existed? Is it connected to the things that we eat? Like, what's going on? Why is it so popular these days?
I love that question, Eleanor. It's a really important question, and I don't know that anyone knows for sure. I know that there are several things going on. For sure, there is the piece of women were largely not diagnosed as children. And as women hit pregnancy or perimenopause, they start to have a harder time focusing. They have a harder time getting themselves to do tasks. Basically, they meet criteria for ADHD. And it's because the ways they were masking before no longer work because their system is overloaded. And
Mm,
so a lot of women, myself included, masked through over functioning and people pleasing and perfectionism and high achievement. But then once we go to a place where our circumstances exceed our capacity to mask in those ways, then it's like, oh my gosh, I have ADHD.
yeah.
So some of it is that diagnostically, a lot of us were missed. I actually even was assessed for ADHD when I was 29, and I
Mm,
was newly a therapist back then, somewhat newly. Well, yeah, newly. And I was missed because I was told that I was subclinical, which means I almost met criteria, but not quite, because I functioned too well and had
oh,
done too well for myself.
okay.
But the amount of functioning I was doing every day was about 3 hours of things to be able to do the things I was doing. And
Mm,
right. So what's happening is more and more women are starting to come out and say, I'm having to do all this. I didn't realize this wasn't what other people do.
yeah.
And so that's one piece of it is women were missed. We were missed, especially those who had inattentive type. Now I don't. I have hyperactive type, as you know me. You probably are very clear on that.
Lots of
I
energy.
doubt in anyone's mind. You always have such a soothing, grounding energy. So I'm a little more grounded when I speak with you, but I definitely have hyperactive type. But a lot of times people with inattentive type get missed because they're the quiet good girls that nobody notices, and they're daydreaming, and they may be also masked through high achievement and over functioning,
Okay.
so no
So
one
let's
can.
dive more into that for like the
Yeah.
listeners who are like, is this
Yeah.
me? Is this not me? What are
Yeah.
the different types? So you're
Okay.
talking about hyperactivity and inattentive. Is there a third type? And what are their
Combined. Yes. Yes. So there is hyperactive type, combined type, and then inattentive type. And combined
Okay.
type is both. But here's what I will say that's very important for women, especially to understand. The diagnostic criteria that are in the manual that us therapists use was the research was only done on men and
Oh,
white,
well,
right, white cisgendered men at that.
of course.
Uh-huh. And so that's another piece of the puzzle that has us missed because it
Yeah,
looks different in us.
yeah, yeah, totally.
So that is another layer, but there is hyperactive type, which tends to mean you're more fidgety, uh, have a hard time, like I interrupted you before, super common with hyperactive type. We tend to blurt out. It's hard to wait our turn. And not that that would never happen with someone with inattentive type, but when you think of someone who's more inattentive type, they're more the daydreamers. They're in their head. And not that I'm never in my head, but I'm also very all over the place in the physical world if I'm not reining it in and masking in some
Mm.
way.
It's the 80-20 rule, I guess.
What do you
If
mean? Say more.
80% of the time you're like hyperactive
Oh,
and fidgety,
maybe.
but you can daydream 20%, then you're still belonging to the hyperactive type.
Yeah, I think that could be closer to active or accurate. I don't know
Yeah.
that that's like data supported, but certainly, yeah, you can present both ways. I will say that some women with inattentive type will report that their minds are still very busy
Mm.
and that their minds race. So part of the reason that conversation with someone who has ADHD is different is because our minds go ahead in the conversation and predict how it's going to play out. And so parts of us believe we actually already know what you're going to say. So we're like, okay, we just skip to the next thing, which is not super polite, but it's what we do. And so
Mhm.
when you're in, as an ADHD woman, when I'm in conversation with other ADHD women, that's just how we talk. And we don't consider it interrupting. We're like, oh, they get what I'm saying. And so the conversation keeps going.
Yeah,
When you're in conversation with people who don't have ADHD, you can end up feeling very rude and like giving people the impression that you don't care about what they have to
yeah,
say,
yeah, yeah,
when in all reality, it's just that our brains move
yeah,
very, very quickly
yeah,
and we're impatient and impulsive is part of the diagnostics.
yeah,
So that impulsivity requires an enormous amount of energy
to be controlled.
to wait our turn, to be controlled so that we're not speaking out of turn, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I had noticed in some people that have it, but correct me if I'm wrong. It's also this way of, go like wanting to speak about something and then suddenly going in another direction or being distracted by things around you. Or is that also part of it?
Yes, we're
Yeah.
very distractible. And in fact, when I record my own podcast, I have very clear notes and I have to mark, like keep track of where I am so that I remember to keep the train on the track. And then if the train goes off the track, I will physically put my finger on my notes so I remember because my brain does not naturally remember that. And
Yeah.
because I work with ADHDers, that's not unusual for them
Hmm.
to have to do that.
Yeah.
But for me, it is necessary.
Yeah. It's that reminds me of a funny story. It was actually my first argument with my
Oh,
husband, Rich. We were together for 1 year and we were in Squamish for like our first week. And we wanted to discover the town to be like, do we want to move here or do we want to move to Vancouver? Like, what are we going to do? We had decided we were going to move in together, but we weren't sure where exactly. And so we're in Squamish, and I tell him, oh, there's this really nice restaurant by the river. There's a kind of a walk to go there, but I think it would be nice so we can discover the town. And so he says, okay, great, meet me at the co-working where I'm working, and then we'll just walk from there. It was a pretty long walk because I didn't realize how big Squamish was at the time. On Google Maps, you don't really know. You're like, oh, it's a straight line by the river in the forest. It's great. 2 hour walk. Thank you.
oh, oh
So we
my.
were getting pretty hungry. And on that walk, because I was getting hungry, I was like, let's get to the restaurant. It's 7 p.m. We've been walking for an hour and a half. And I'm very much like, when I have a goal in mind, I'm very focused and I go there. And Rich was like, oh, let's take this little path. Oh, look, this little tree. Oh, what's the river doing there? And at some point, I was like, we just lost 20 minutes because you keep going right and left. Can we please just keep going? And I was getting angry. And
For
so we went
sure.
into our first argument, and that's the day I really realized, okay, we don't function the same way. And so that keeps coming back in our relationship because he's very like distracted and wanting to go side to side, whereas I'm like, this is where we're going. Let's not get distracted. And that's the goal that we need to reach, right? And
Yeah,
well, now, of course, I've realized that he might have ADHD himself. So I'm like, oh, makes so much sense.
that's what's going on. Yeah, we can get easily distracted. And in a lot of cases, it isn't necessarily a problem.
Yeah.
It, I want to say something about something you said before I share about that thought. You said our brains do things differently. And I love that statement,
Mm,
as I actually believe that the word disorder as part of ADHD, attention
mm.
hyperactivity disorder is deficit disorder rather, is a problem
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
because our brains are wired differently. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean they're better or worse. And actually, interestingly, evolutionarily, and your walk is a perfect example. If you think about how we used to live in nature, we needed people who could find the berries and the extra
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But we also needed the people who were focused and doing the tasks. And
Yeah.
so actually both of our brain types are needed.
Yeah.
What's challenging is the world we're in now is very much focused on one type of brain,
Yeah.
not the ADHD brain. And so then we get called disordered or
Yeah.
dysfunctional or whatever, when the reality is we just need to find a way to work with our brains. So one of the things I talk a lot about is setting your life and your work up the ADHD way,
Yeah.
because most of us were taught to do things the neurotypical way. So neurotypical means you're not neurodivergent, which means you don't have autism, you don't have ADHD.
Yeah.
Neurodivergence means lots of other things as well. Trauma can be in there, as can bipolar
Mm.
disorder. But at any rate, um, society is very much catered to the neurotypical brain. And so with ADHD, the reason we got in trouble so much is because we were not following the neurotypical rules
Yeah.
unless
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
were in mask. So anyway, but I love that you said that.
So you said as well, like you need to set up your life in a way that just works for your brain. So how would that
Mhm.
be? What would you need to do differently?
So first of all, I recommend people do things to help address the challenges of ADHD because we do have to focus sometimes. And so to me, that means making space in your day for daily exercise or movement.
Mm.
I like to say movement because some people get hives at the word exercise. And because exercise is essential in terms of it creates a nice base level of dopamine.
Mm.
Our brain's lack of access to dopamine, the same way the neurotypical brain has access to dopamine, is our lack compared to that makes it harder for our brains to do executive functioning things, which includes planning and organizing, understanding time. Like we have a very hard time understanding time
Oh
unless
my
we
God, that's so my husband.
I have a visual timer that I have on right now so I can keep track of how long we've been talking
Okay.
because we can't our brains don't understand time because of our executive functioning being different.
Mm.
So we have to do visual time.
Yeah.
And so first of all, getting movement in every day is really essential because it creates a nice base level of dopamine, which can give your brain a little bit more access to be able to focus better throughout the day.
Yeah.
I will also say meditating, and everyone gets all riled up when you say meditation and ADHD. So I want to clarify what I mean by that. There's
Yeah.
an ADHD way to meditate. I'm not talking about not being distracted, your thoughts being quiet. First of all, that's not how you meditate in the first place.
No.
No thoughts will ever be quiet. Everyone's brains like to think. So
Yeah.
with ADHD, though, a lot of times it might be a movement-based meditation or a mindfulness based, or you might chant a mantra because you are with ADHD, you do get distracted more. You're bringing your brain
Mm.
back. But I will tell you the reason I recommend it is not only the studies that talk about the efficacy for the ADHD brain, but I've been meditating since I was 25 and I'm almost 51. and I can focus way better than most of my ADHD counterparts,
Oh,
even though I'm in perimenopause. So I know I'm a sample size of one, but there's other studies that actually
yeah, yeah.
show. Yeah. So that's one piece. Another piece is making sure that there is protein at every meal.
Mm.
When the ADHD brain is low on protein, our ability to focus, our ability to be motivated drastically goes down. And so having protein consistently is important. So that's just like when you were saying, like,
So
I'm
interesting.
hungry. Yeah, you're saying I'm hungry. Well, he was probably hungry too, which is why he was more distracted.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Especially as a man, they eat all the time. They're always hungry.
Right. Yeah, totally. The other thing I will say in terms of working and doing getting stuff done the ADHD way is it's important for us to match our energy with the tasks and the time of day that works for us. For a lot of us, the typical 8 to 5 schedule does not work.
Yeah.
So I start my workday at 10. And before that, I do all of my lovely self-love routine that is
Yeah.
also ADHD love routine.
Hmm.
And then I work till 7 or 8 at night, depending on what I have to do that day.
Yeah.
But giving yourself permission. Some people who have ADHD can work early in the morning, but they need the afternoon off, and then they do really well in the evening.
That's what my husband does.
Right. And
Yeah.
so setting yourself up the ADHD way means honoring your energy. As part of that, also, depending on the energy of the day, and some of this can be where the sun is in the sky, whether it's visible or not, you may be better able to focus on certain tasks.
Hmm.
So I know for me, I can do a very good creative task first thing in the morning. But if I try and do a creative task in the middle of the day, it will take me 10 times longer if I can
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
If I start my morning with emails, I get stressed out and I can't focus the rest of the day. So
Yeah.
part of working the ADHD way is figuring that out for yourself. When do you function best? When can you do it? And then it, I don't want to say explaining, but teaching your loved ones that this is how you do it.
Yeah. 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 So they can be on board and not shame you for being different or doing things in another way. Yeah.
That's right. I will also say that there are other tasks that require multiple steps, like folding laundry, for example. I swear to you, Eleanor, the folding of the laundry is the bane of my existence. And here's why. It is a multi-step process.
Yeah.
It is multi-step process. So you have to separate and fold and then put away. And when there's too many steps all at once, it can be very hard for our brains to focus. So we can try and also it's boring. I mean, seriously.
Yeah. I
So,
say mantras when I fold laundry.
ooh, I like that. I
Makes it
usually
more
listen to
fun.
music. Yeah, I usually listen to music or a podcast.
Yeah.
But with that brings me to another thing. So with ADHD, number one, we have to break things down into steps and make it easier. So one way to do that is I wash all of my socks and underwear together and towels. That makes it a little easier. And then the other clothes together. I don't pay any attention to
Oh,
whites or whatever, because then that way it's less steps later, if
yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
So if you can make the steps smaller. The other piece is like you said, you listen to mantra or chant mantra, you chant
Yeah.
it. Uh, you are making it interesting.
Yeah.
So this brings me to how our ADHD brains are wired differently. People who do not have ADHD can be more easily motivated by something being important to either you or someone else. They can also be more, you, I should say, can also be more easily motivated by a reward or a consequence. Like if I
Hmm.
don't do this, something bad's going to happen. Now, It's not that people with ADHD are never motivated by that. Certainly, I went to Catholic school and I was terrified of being in trouble, so I learned to mask over functioning and high achievement and perfectionism and people pleasing. So it's not that that can never work. It just, over time, it loses its luster to work because we realize how dysfunctional masking that way is for us.
Yeah.
So our brains, the ADHD brain, is motivated by interest. And
Hmm.
think about our limited access to dopamine. That makes a lot of sense. Dopamine helps with motivation. It helps with executive functioning, like the organizing and planning, but it also is linked to pleasure.
Yeah.
So when something is interesting, we will get some dopamine out of it. So if we can generate interest for our tasks, then we are more likely to do them.
Yeah. I love that. It's God's way of making sure that you are only going to do what you love so you can do your dharma.
It's, it's totally true. I love that you said that because one of the things I just finished refilming one of the sections for my program, and it it was on my framework of delete, automate, delegate, and do. And with the ADHD brain, first of all, because many of us learn to be people pleasers and say
Mm,
yes to everything, and we did that for very good reasons subconsciously, our younger parts were like, well, if I make others happy, then they'll give me some grace when I screw stuff up with my ADHD. And
mm,
we were little kids, so we were basically just trying to avoid punishment and
yeah.
seek reward and belonging.
Yeah.
But we figured that out. Okay,
Yeah.
I just lost my train of thought. See, this happens with ADHD. You get excited and then you're off. So our brains figured out that by doing that, then we were able to be acceptable. And then I
Mm.
was talking about, oh my goodness, it is gone.
Well, I have
So
a postpartum brain, so
yeah, so together we're a match.
yes.
I have a perimenopausal ADHD brain. So the thing with delete, delegate, and automate and do is a lot of us ADHDers say yes to way more than we can handle
Mm,
because
right.
of that early behavior we adopted.
Yeah.
And so because of that, and because of our time blindness, because we think we're like, oh, that'll just take me like 15 minutes. And then
Yeah.
like 5 hours later, we're like, why did I agree to this task?
Yeah.
Because of those two things, we overcommit ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we have way too much on our plates. And then our nervous system gets overwhelmed. And we already tend to be kind of ungrounded because
Yeah.
our ADHD can cause anxiety because of the ways that we've experienced the world.
Yeah.
And so it can create this giant mess of I can't get myself to do this stuff because we've overcommitted through people pleasing. We didn't know how long it would take us. And now we're here and we're like, I can't get anything
Yeah.
done.
And then it's super frustrating. And then we're not working on our dharma because we don't have energy for it left.
That's right, because we're saying yes to everyone else.
Everything. Yeah.
Right.
So you just shared a few ways to like learn to work with our brains and support them. There are a lot of people, of course, who are taking drugs to support them. Like, what's your take on that?
Okay. I, so here's the thing. I was not officially diagnosed with ADHD because I was told I functioned too well, but I was
Yeah.
29 before I even knew to be assessed. I just thought that was how everyone's brain was. So,
Mhm.
I always felt different and I didn't understand why it was so much easier for everyone else. But I was like, all right,
Mm.
I guess my spirit learns things the hard way. I didn't know. But so I, by then, was functioning well enough that I didn't feel a need to try it. I will say that to me, it's a really personal decision because I I learned tools early on and function pretty well with them. I know some people, like I've had a client who I will always remember her. She was in my office and she hadn't taken her meds. And for her to be able to focus on our conversation, she had to look at a nail that was sticking out in my wall, like
Oh,
stare at the nail. And I still had to redirect her over and over and over and over
yeah.
because she hadn't had her meds. And so, like, it depends how severe your ADHD is. If someone hasn't been able to function without meds, then I'm not opposed to people trying that. But I will also say this, and this brings me to a conversation I had with someone who's a nurse and a nutritionist. And actually, there was two women. One was in holistic health and one was there. And they both kind of said the same thing, that when you are taking care of your body and your brain very well, eating nutrient dense foods, getting regular protein, sleeping at least 8 hours a night, because that's the thing with ADHD. If we're deficient in sleep, our ability to focus and get stuff done goes out the window.
Zero, yeah.
Seriously. But if you're doing those things, not drinking alcohol, not doing recreational drugs, like I get it. I will occasionally have a glass of wine, but I generally try and stay away from it because it depresses my central nervous system, so it makes my ADHD worse.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
can
yeah.
very much feel it in my body. So I tend to avoid those things. And what both of these women said, one was a doctor of integrative medicine, I believe, and the other was a nurse nutritionist. They both said that what they notice with their ADHD clients is when they are able to take care of themselves in that way, their symptoms are less severe. Now, I don't know if that client, she was not doing some of the things I just talked about.
Yeah,
And a lot of ADHDers are like, how can I even get myself to do that stuff? So
yeah.
sometimes the medication is important to even get a boost to be able to get the skills in place. And some people might have it so severely that they do need additional support.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we have people in our environment, if we're a wife of someone that has ADHD or a mother of a child that has ADHD or a sister, like how can we support them? Serving them protein at each meal? Check, keep that in
Yeah,
my mind.
yeah.
What else?
Protein.
Yeah.
Avocados are supposedly good too, but I'm not a nutritionist, so that's out of my scope. I naturally have loved avocados every day since was introduced to them in my 30s.
Yeah.
Uh, and I will tell you, I don't know, I can't go a day without an avocado, but uh, at any rate, supporting, here's what I would say. I would say be in conversation
Mm,
because it's a neurodivergence. It's a difference. And it doesn't mean we're bad or wrong. However, it can be frustrating for people who are not ADHD to deal with us who are ADHD in the neurotypical world. Now, if the world was not designed the way it was, with the focus on
mm,
productivity and the focus on activities being very linear and less circular, and if the world was different, this might not be as big of a problem. But we're
yeah.
in the world we're in now. And so I would recommend being in conversation. And here's the thing, it is really hard as a person with ADHD to mask in your own home.
Yeah.
I can mask in conversation with people so that you don't see my ADHD as much. It'll still happen once in a while, like it did earlier in our conversation, but I can mask it so it's not as interfering.
Yeah.
But to do that in my home environment would be so taxing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
so,
you'd say really like supporting them having the right food, getting exercise every
yep,
day,
yep,
supporting them to meditate. And then I
yep,
guess simply asking them, what do you need? Like,
yeah,
are you feeling ungrounded now? What can you do to be
yeah,
grounded? How can I
yeah.
support you?
Getting grounded is important. And also having honest conversations about the frustration. Because here's the thing,
Mm,
if as the loved one of someone with ADHD, you are frustrated, I guarantee that person is 100 times more frustrated with themselves than you are. They may have
mm,
learned to try not to focus on being so frustrated with themselves, But I get a lot less frustrated with myself now because I've done a lot of work, like a lot of
Yeah.
inner work
Yeah.
to love myself and just embrace my ADHD as is. Most people have not done that. So most people in your life are probably just as frustrated with themselves as you are with them. And
Yeah.
so to be in conversation and say like, hey, I want to talk about this. And I'm noticing that this is happening, and I'm aware that a part of me is frustrated. And I know that you probably are doing the best you know how to do with it, like
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
compassion. And I got to believe that it might even frustrate you. So, can we have a conversation to work together to sort out how to deal with this problem, whatever it is, as
Yeah.
a team?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. These are amazing questions. Um, because I support a lot of women with connecting with their soul and their intuition, and I have observed a bit of a link between ADHD, hypervigilance, and so disconnection from the body, disconnection from the intuition. Could you speak to that and the link between ADHD and intuition? And if there is a disconnect, how to reconnect
Yes.
ourselves to our
So I'm
intuition?
so glad you answered this question. First of all, this was so aligned with my own experience. I still have to work on connecting with my intuition for several reasons. One, our brains go very fast. And I have a client whose former therapist used to tell her, um, like she'd come in hot to appointments, right? And just plop down. And she's like, let's take a few breaths and let your spirit catch up with your body.
Mm,
And that sentence, let your spirit catch up with your body, is so what it's like to have ADHD because
mm,
we go so fast because we were shamed for not getting tasks done. So we can get
mm,
hyper focused on everything we have to do. And so a lot of times, and we can be all up in our thoughts because they're moving fast, so they're very attractive. Our inner world is very attractive, but not necessarily the deeper inner world. So that is part one. That's the easier answer. The bigger answer, and this is what I talk about a lot with the women I work with, because I only work with women right now. What we know is most people growing up with ADHD receive way more negative comments, criticism, and correction than those who do not have ADHD.
mm.
Yeah, psychiatrist Michael Jelenic, and I can't remember, I think he's out of Harvard Medical School. He has estimated that by age 10, starting at school age to age 10, ADHD kids have received 20,000 more negative or critical comments than their
Wow.
ADHD peers. And I did the math on that, Ellie, and it was like only 9 more comments per day. And let me tell you, I like I
That's a
math
lot already.
Oh, I was gonna say it's actually not that much because I masked really well through over functioning, people pleasing, perfectionism, and high achievement. But my ADHD would still come out in the blurting out and in the talking out of
Mm,
turn, and then the messiness of my bedroom and the messiness of my locker. So 9 comments extra a day, absolutely easy to have gotten there. That is a very conservative estimate. So unless you had inattentive type, if you had inattentive type, people may not have noticed you as much. So there's a chance. But that's a conservative estimate. So think about this. If on a daily basis you are given the impression that you are defective, that you're doing it wrong, that you're incapable,
mm. Low
that's
self-esteem.
it's low self-esteem and for a lot of us can be traumatic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have very specific, I've worked through them now, but very specific trauma memories of teachers shaming me for what I now know was my ADHD instead of offering
Mm.
to help me. Now, granted, it was the 80s, so they didn't look for
Yeah,
ADHD in boys, let alone girls, particularly not in a Catholic school. So I get it. I'm not judging them. They knew what they knew at the
yeah,
time.
yeah,
However, this leaves a mark. And
yeah.
so what we know about trauma is it disconnects your ability to receive interoceptive cues, like cues about
Hmm.
what's going, for those of you who don't know what interoception is, it's about like cues from the body about your experiences.
Yeah.
And makes your body focus primarily on survival. So you are always trying to avoid criticism and correction and complaint because for the first however many years of your life, and maybe still, you've been criticized, corrected. People told you're annoying. People don't want you in their social circle because you interrupt or whatever. And so a lot of ADHDers can be hypervigilant
Yeah.
and because of that unresolved trauma.
Yeah.
So then when you are in your fight or flight response or your shutdown response is the other option. As you know, I know you know, I don't know if your listeners know, but those are survival responses.
Yeah.
So at that time, the only thing your brain and your nervous system prioritize is survival,
Yeah.
not your podcast, not your blog, not the emails you need to send to your prospective clients. It's survival. And so that too can make it harder to focus with ADHD, harder to get motivated, but also it disconnects you from who you are because you've been told that you're bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're in survival, you're not relaxed enough to be able to hear your intuition, to hear your spirit, to hear the insights. It's like you're trying to survive, you're not trying to receive insights.
No, I will tell you this personally, and I've done a lot of work. I still have to really work on I meditate daily. I've meditated for 25-ish years and maybe not daily right away, but it's been pretty consistent for about 10. And I still have to be very intentional to sit in silence and try not to let my brain race and try to
Mm,
relax my body. And I'm telling you, one of the only ways I ever figured out how to do it was yoga.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yoga is really powerful to calm the body and then the mind is calm.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it grounds it, it does that. But it
Yeah.
keeps you busy enough that like your brain doesn't go into freaking out mode about calming down.
Yeah. Makes total sense.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to add to the question you had, and this is a little less heavy. So, to avoid all that criticism and complaint and correction, a lot of us learn to mask our ADHD. And even that mask, separate from the wounds we hold, that mask makes us disconnected from who we are.
Yeah.
I did not really know myself at all until probably around age 40.
Mm,
Like, really know myself. And I'm still working on it because I didn't realize how much I was masking
hmm
in order to get by, in order to not be judged and criticized and eyes rolled at and not included in things.
hmm
So
Wow.
that, yeah. And so what I notice a lot of women who learn to mask because you have to be the good girl, which means not ADHD, we get into our 20s and 30s and we're depressed
Yeah.
because we have no connection, no even knowledge of who we really are.
Yeah.
So that's another layer that's similar but a little different.
Yeah. And I can see, to come back to our question at the beginning, because we are in a time of such great awakening and spiritual awakening, we get the opportunity to ask ourselves, who am I? Why am I here? What are my gifts? And so this ADHD is coming to the surface because it's getting in the way of getting
Yep,
to know who we are. And it's an invitation to heal those traumas so that we can connect with the essence that's underneath.
exactly. That's exactly right. It's exactly,
Beautiful.
yeah.
I love all of that. I feel like you have provided so many tools and insights. I have learned so much from this podcast, so thank you so much. Is there anything you feel like sharing for all the women who are listening and are like, oh my God, I feel like that's me. Where do I even begin to
Yeah.
heal this ADHD? You've
Yeah.
given a few tips, but maybe you want to add something more.
Yeah. Well, so here's what I'll say. A lot of people are like, do I go get diagnosed? Do I not get diagnosed? here's the thing. It can be very validating to get
Mhm.
diagnosed, but
Yeah.
it's problematic because not everyone really knows what ADHD looks like in women, and all of the diagnostic tools to determine if you're ADHD were normed off of men.
Yeah.
So you might have ADHD, pay all this money to get diagnosed, and be told that you don't have it, and then think you don't have it, and then feel like you're just messed up.
Yeah.
And so I'm not against people seeking diagnoses. Um, I understand there's a risk of everyone thinking they're ADHD, but the difference is if you're having a hard time, like if you're having marked difficulty functioning because of some of the things we're talking about, that's different than occasionally having uh, postpartum fog or
Yeah.
perimenopause fog or just regular not motivated sometimes.
Of
This is a
course.
pervasive daily thing. So
Yeah.
if you on a regular basis are struggling with some of the things we've talked about, you probably have ADHD.
Yeah.
I will tell you, in my 40s, when I realized like they were wrong, they did not they should have diagnosed me and they didn't. um I decided not to bother to try again because I was like, I know what
You knew your truth.
I
Yeah.
knew. I knew my truth. And so
Yeah.
I would just say that know your truth, trust yourself, and try out some ADHD strategies to see if they work for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I, of course, am going to recommend my podcast, the self
Yes,
love.
please do.
Yeah, the self love ADHD Woman Way. Sorry. Yeah, ADHD Woman Way podcast, which is focused on ADHD women entrepreneurs, but I hear lots of people with ADHD. I even have some male listeners. I choose to focus on women because our diagnostic situation is so unique from men,
Mhm.
and just energetically, it's a different experience.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Right, but that would be an option for sure. There are also a lot of really great books, and I can send them to you if you want to share them in the show notes. But one of
Yeah.
my favorites is How to ADHD.
Hmm.
Name is Jessica something. It's this really thick book that looks intense, but like you don't have to read it cover to cover. Like you can kind of flip through to the parts that work for you. It's written in a very ADHD way. So I really, really, really like that one. Uh,
Hmm.
for sure, getting movement in, some kind of mindfulness meditation, making sure you have protein at every meal. And to be clear, I'm mostly vegan, so I'm not talking about it has to be meat.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
for those of you that are listening, you're like, well, I'm vegan. Well, you and I both know if you're vegan that like we know how to get protein. So
Yes.
at any rate, the other thing, I just happen to have this on my desk. It's Danny Donovan's book, The
The
Anti-Planner.
anti-planner.
And I'm not an affiliate or anything. I'm just a huge fan. I had her on my podcast. She wrote a book called The Anti-Planner, and there's these different tabs for how to get yourself to do stuff when you feel a certain way. So whether
Mm,
it's stuck, unmotivated, overwhelmed, disorganized, or discouraged, she's got strategies. And a lot of,
amazing.
yeah, amazing. So if you're struggling to get yourself to do stuff, for sure, that's a piece of it. A lot of it is gamification. So if you
Mm,
can gamify things, like make them a game, make it a challenge, make it fun, that will spark interest in the task
hmm.
so that you'll want to do it.
Amazing.
But more than all of this, what I would say, Eleanor, is to work on radically accepting your ADHD.
Yeah.
Radically accepting your brain as it is, not as disordered, not as dysfunctional, not as defective as maybe younger parts of you believe, because that's what the messages you received, but rather understanding that this is just a neurodifference that's hard because of the way our world is set up. And the more whoever's listening can get that into your head, that this is not that you're messed up, it's just your brain operates a little differently,
Yeah.
and have compassion for yourself. That is going to be what goes the biggest, like the
And
biggest.
there's a gift as well in that brain because you get to see things what other people don't see. So
Yeah,
you can see solutions what other people don't see, or you can see things that we might need that other peoples don't see because you just
that's
think
right.
differently.
There is actually in my program, I talk about the 10 benefits of ADHD for entrepreneurship. because there are specific that's why so many entrepreneurs are ADHDers, because
Mm.
our brains are actually wired for entrepreneurship. The way we
Oh.
can yeah, we can tolerate risk in different ways. We're super creative. Most of us are very charismatic. A lot of us very good problem solvers in unique ways that other people, like you said, don't see. I can't remember the whole list, but there's a lot of ways that our brains work that neurotypical brains don't, and that doesn't mean one is better. It just means that we get to, just like people with a neurotypical brain, embrace the beauty and deal with the challenges. We do the same thing.
Mhm, mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jen, for all your expertise and wisdom. This was so insightful. I am really excited for this episode to air because I know so many of my listeners are going to find so much value in this. So, thank you for your time and everything that you brought to this podcast.
Thank you so much, Eleanor, for having me. It's always a pleasure to just share space with you, and I'm
Mhm.
excited to get this information out for more
Yes,
and more people so that women aren't struggling so much thinking they're bad and instead can embrace the gifts.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so, so much.
Thank
I will see
you.
you very soon.
Sounds good.